I've never packed up a campsite in under 3 minutes before. I hope I never have to again. This happened 2 autumns ago when I decided to spend a weekend alone in a national forest a few hours from home. I picked a primitive site nearly 5 miles from the nearest road because I wanted complete silence. No reception, no generators, just trees and a small creek. The hike in was uneventful, except for one thing. About half a mile before reaching the campsite, I found an old cooler sitting beside the trail. It looked new, but it was empty. I figured someone had forgotten it and kept walking. When I reached my campsite, everything looked normal. There was an old fire ring, 2 logs positioned as benches, and enough flat ground for my tent. The strange part started after I finished setting up. Someone had stacked fresh firewood beside my tent. I hadn't done it. I looked around, expecting another camper nearby, but the forest was completely still. Whoever left it couldn't have been far away, yet I couldn't hear footsteps or voices. I convinced myself I'd somehow overlooked the pile when I arrived. As darkness settled in, I cooked dinner and sat by the fire. Around 9, I heard footsteps circling just beyond the light. Not approaching, just circling. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Always the same slow pace. Whenever I shined my flashlight into the trees, the sound stopped immediately. The moment I lowered it, the footsteps resumed. This went on for almost an hour. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I climbed into my tent. I woke sometime after midnight because someone whispered my name. Not loudly, just enough to pull me from sleep. I sat frozen, listening. Nothing. Then, I heard my zipper move. Very slowly. The tent door was being opened from the outside. I grabbed my flashlight and yelled. The zipper stopped halfway. Silence. When I threw the flap open, nobody was there. The forest looked empty, but my boots, they were gone. I'd left them outside. Now they had disappeared. I wasn't about to search barefoot, so I stayed inside until sunrise. The next morning, I found both boots neatly placed beside the fire ring, facing my tent, perfectly aligned, as if someone wanted me to notice them. I packed immediately. While dismantling the tent, I discovered something underneath it that hadn't been there before. A second fire ring. Old, buried beneath leaves. It had been directly under where I'd slept. Inside the ashes sat a rusted camping mug. Scratched into the metal were 3 words. Welcome back, Eli. My name is Eli. I'd never been there before. Or at least, I don't remember ever being there. As I hurried toward the trail, I reached the spot where I'd seen the abandoned cooler. It was gone. In its place stood a neatly stacked pile of firewood, exactly like the one that had appeared beside my tent. I still camp, just never alone. And every now and then, when I unpack my gear, I find pine needles inside my boots, the kind that only grow in that forest. I spent an entire night watching another camper disappear without ever hearing them scream. At least, I think there was another camper. I'd driven to a remote mountain lake after learning about it from an online hiking forum. The place wasn't officially marked on most maps, which meant fewer people. Exactly what I wanted. When I arrived in the afternoon, I noticed one tent across the lake. Bright orange. Far enough away that I couldn't make out the person. I waved anyway. Nothing. I figured they hadn't seen me. As evening came, I kept catching glimpses of movement around their campsite. Someone walking between trees, standing beside the water, returning to the tent. Always just one person. The distance made every movement seem oddly slow. After sunset, I saw their lantern switch on. Then another. Then another. 3 lights surrounded the tent. I assumed they were hanging lanterns. Around midnight, I woke to splashing. The lake was perfectly calm, except for ripples moving toward my shore. I shined my flashlight. Nothing. Across the water, the orange tent was still glowing, but the lights around it had moved. They were now standing in a straight line along the shoreline. 3 pale lights, motionless, watching my side. I couldn't shake the feeling they weren't lanterns anymore. They were too high off the ground and too evenly spaced. I stayed inside my tent until sunrise. When daylight came, I looked across the lake. The orange tent was gone. Completely gone. No ashes, no footprints, nothing. Curious, I hiked around the shoreline to where I'd seen it. The ground hadn't held a tent in years. Grass covered everything. No flattened earth, no fire pit, no trash, nothing. I figured I'd somehow mistaken another part of the lake. Then I found the only object there. A faded photograph sealed inside a plastic bag. It showed the same shoreline, an orange tent, 3 people smiling beside it. The date on the back read September 18, 1997. I turned the photo over again after noticing handwriting beneath the date. If the lights move closer, don't wait for morning. I laughed nervously. Then I realized something. The lake was completely silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. Across the water, 3 pale figures stood exactly where I'd camped the night before. Perfectly still, looking toward me. I blinked. They were gone. I left immediately. Months later, I developed the photos from my own trip. Every picture facing the lake was ruined, except one. The final image showed my tent, and across the water, an orange tent, exactly where I'd first seen it. The timestamp on the file was the morning after I'd already packed up. I threw my compass into the woods 3 different times. It kept coming back. I'm not superstitious. I've been backpacking for years, and equipment fails all the time. That's what I thought was happening. I was hiking through a dense pine forest, where every trail looked identical. After setting up camp, I checked my compass before planning the next day's route. The needle spun constantly. It never settled. I tapped it, still spinning. Assuming it was broken, tossed it into the trees. I had GPS anyway. That night, I woke because something tapped the side of my tent. 3 gentle knocks. Tap, tap, tap. I waited. Nothing else happened. The next morning, my compass sat outside the tent entrance, standing upright, balanced on its edge. I stared at it for a long time before convincing myself I'd imagined throwing it. Memory plays tricks when you're tired. I pocketed it and continued hiking. By afternoon, my GPS battery died, unexpectedly. I stopped for lunch, looked at the spinning compass, got irritated, and threw it into a ravine. It disappeared among rocks. Problem solved. That evening, I camped nearly 6 miles away. Just before sunset, I unrolled my sleeping bag. The compass fell out. Not from my backpack, from inside the sleeping bag itself. I emptied every piece of gear. No tears, no hidden pockets, no explanation. I slept terribly. Around 2 in the morning, I heard someone walking circles around my tent. Not cautiously, confidently, like they already knew exactly where I was. Every few minutes, they'd stop beside my head, stand there, then continue walking. I never heard breathing, never heard branches snapping, just footsteps. At dawn, the tracks surrounding my tent weren't human. They looked like shoe prints, except every footprint pointed inward, toward the tent. Impossible. I packed immediately. Halfway back to the trailhead, I stopped beside a stream and threw the compass into the deepest part. I watched it sink. Satisfied, I kept walking. When I reached my truck, I unlocked the driver's door. Something metallic clinked against the dashboard. The compass. It rested beside my keys. The needle wasn't spinning anymore. It pointed directly at me. Not north. Me. I sold the truck a week later, burned the backpack, replaced every piece of gear. It didn't matter. Every camping trip since then, no matter where I go, I wake up to 3 gentle taps on my tent. And every single morning, a compass I don't own is waiting outside the door.